It's time to declutter our paths. You're inside the Mom Stuff Coffee Shop, a podcast dedicated to helping you thrive and get back up again and turning your pain into power and your trauma into triumph. Let me ask you a question. If you were able to minimize the differences that separate people and find and highlight the deeper core areas where agreement happens, how would that change your business? This change of perspective connects teams and align companies to each other, to their client, and to the services and products they offer. Daniel Levin is an author, and in his latest book, The Mosaic, he introduces 4 practices of connection, a completely new and innovative strategy to reconnect people and help companies work together to innovate and achieve more. He's a visionary that's not only able to conceptualize the disruption needed, but also to connect the pieces needed for the organization to make change happen. Levin walked away from the opportunity to run a $1 billion global company, and that company was a household name. He hitchhiked around the world to find happiness and inner peace. Years later, he helped grow Hay House, a publishing company, from $3 million a year in sales to $100 million a year in revenue. He has worked with governments, corporations, CEOs, small businesses, and entrepreneurs. I am extremely thankful that he stopped by the Mom Stuff Coffee Shop to drop some major gems on us on how do we declutter our path. He is not only gifted in business, but he's also gifted in seeking purpose, not only the external, but on the inside. Friends, this is going to be such a treat. So step inside the Mom Stuff Coffee Shop as we have a soulful conversation with Daniel Levin. Hi, friends. Today we are joined with Daniel Levin, the author of The Mosaic, a life-changing fable that invites people to listen to those others do not hear and to see the situations in their life differently. To learn more about Daniel Levin, please visit www.danielbrucelevin.com. So welcome to the show.
Hey, Kay, thanks so much for having me. We just were in the green room chatting, and I have to say to you, it took me about 14 seconds to love you and love the work you're doing. And so thank you. What an honor to be here with you. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. What an honor for you to be here. So today I wanted to talk about the work that you're doing in the world. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself in The Mosaic?
Thank you so much. The book that hovers over my left shoulder here behind me has really completely transformed everything about my life and changed me. I thought that I was living a purposeful life all these years. I've had a lot of different opportunities to live what people would say was a really blessed life. And I've had a lot of opportunities for what people would say was a really cursed life. I've made incredible decisions that pushed me to the top of the mountain, and some really sad decisions that brought me to the bottom of the hill. And in that course of time, I've had the opportunity to be with the richest people in the world, to sit at their dining room tables and to get to know them and to know their children and their parents. But I've also had the opportunity to travel and be with the poorest people that the world has ever known. And they're on their cardboard boxes in the middle of a cold and rainy night, sitting together. And what I saw, Kay, is that it doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter who you say you are. It doesn't matter what organization you run or what job you're searching for. Every single person wants the same 3 things. They want to be loved and accepted. They want to be listened to and heard, and they want to be acknowledged and validated. And when I realized that changed my life. I thought that I was doing purposeful work. I thought that I was always helping people to grow and become something different. But helping isn't what the world needs. The world needs love. When we love each other, when you think about what a mosaic looks like, there are no pieces that are teaching other people pieces how to live. They're just all in a horizontal reality where they just hold each other. And in holding each other, every piece becomes stronger. Every piece becomes bigger. Every piece is more powerful because they're connected to all the other pieces that exist. And we know this. Together we can do so much more than we can individually. And yet we still separate rather than unite. And what I do isn't anything special. Anybody can love and accept another person. Anybody can listen to another person and hear them. Anybody can acknowledge and validate them. It just doesn't happen for some reason.
So the pillar of the Mom Stuff Coffee Shop is turning pain into power. So can we walk through each of those and tell our listeners how can we start to turn our pain into power by, number one, listening to each other?
Yeah. If I can share with you a story, one of the people, of all those people that I've met, one of the people that has really changed my life is a 31-year-old woman who I've known all her life, but I've never been able to have a conversation with her. She's developmentally delayed, and she can't speak like you and I can speak. She's my daughter. So I've known her from the birth, from the moment she was born until the moment she's living now. And along the way, I've watched her frustration of trying to speak to, and just the way she pronounces her words, people just don't understand her. But because we're so close, she counts on me to understand her. And it's important to me that I do understand her. I give everything to understand her. But I noticed about maybe 20 years ago, she started to develop a pattern. She would speak, and when she wasn't understood, she would yell, thinking maybe that if it was her volume that was making people not hear her, but it wasn't her volume, it was the clarity. It was the clarity of her voice, of her pronunciation. So when she spoke and wasn't heard, she would yell. When she yelled and she wasn't heard, then she would tantrum. And when she tantrumed and she wasn't heard, she would attack. This went on for about 15 years. And she would come running at me and try and bite me or rip my shirt or do something. And sometimes it happened 3, 4, 10 times a day. And finally, in the midst of her rage, she was running towards me. And I said to her, Alisa, we can't do this anymore. You know I love you more than anything in this world. I would give anything to understand you. I just can't understand your words. Will you please try and tell me what you're trying to say to me without words? Just communicate to me some other way, because your words are getting in the way of it. She stopped running and dead in her tracks. The rage on her face turned into a smile that melted my heart. And she looked at me and in perfect English said, I am Daddy. And I said, I'm sorry. What the expletive deleted are you talking about? How are you doing that? And she took her finger and she put it to the side of her head. And I knew she was putting thoughts in my head. I just didn't trust it. But I wanted confirmation from her in this moment. And I said, you little son of a gun, have you been putting thoughts in my head? And she said, yes, Daddy. And she started to laugh. All of the pain, all of the frustration melted off of her shoulders because she had finally found a way after 15 years of doing this to get through to me, and that I had heard it. Do you know, KK, from that moment forward, she never yelled, she never tantrumed, and she never attacked.
Wow.
The desire to be heard is so powerful and so built into our systems that we'll do anything to be heard.
Yes. Yes.
If that were the end of it, I would say to you, I'm happy with the result. I now have a relationship with my daughter where I can hear her in other ways than I could hear her before. But I looked around in the world that we live in, and I saw the same thing happen in businesses. I saw the same thing happen in people. I saw the same thing happen in response in what our bodies are trying to say to us and what the environment is trying to say to us. I see the same things in families. I see the same things in prisons. I see the same things in medical. I see the same things in education. That when we speak and we don't get heard, we yell. When we yell and we don't get heard, we tantrum, and when we tantrum and we don't get heard, we attack. Look at what's happening in the United States of America right now, and politically.
Yes.
Those people aren't, whichever side those people are that are not the people that you associate with, they're not doing anything, but they just want to be heard. Yes. And if we would listen to them, they wouldn't need to protest or riot or do whatever they're doing, because they would be heard.
Yes, yes. You know, that is so true, and it's so important for me as a mother to have my children to be heard. And one of my children went through, she was in this group and she wasn't heard and she wasn't seen. And it just really broke my heart. And how important is it for us to raise children to be heard and to be seen? And if they're not, is it okay for us to transition them to where they are heard and they are seen in different groups? Or should we teach them resilience to be...
Beautiful question. You finish your question. I'm sorry. Resilience to be...
Should we teach them resilience to deal with anything in life? Or do we run to places where we are seen, we are heard, we are loved and nurtured? Or do we stay in environments that could develop us in another way? You know?
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful question. I love that question. I think it's our responsibility as parents to hold the space for our children to feel safe enough to listen to themselves. Because part of what's happening in the world that I see is we're raising children that don't know how to hear, who don't know themselves. They don't know how to get in touch with the inner voice that lives inside of them. They don't know how to feel the presence of a God that lives all in every cell that they breathe. And so we look for our confirmation or our appreciation from things outside of us. We can never change the way people will respond to us. What we can change is our response to them. And so if you think again of my daughter, my 31-year-old daughter who can't speak, and if you think how loud her message is of speak, yell, tantrum, attack, if we feel attacked and we run to another environment where where we hope people will accept us, we haven't listened to the pain of what that message is trying to say to us. When we know ourselves, and we really know ourselves, and we listen to the voice that's inside of us, we can walk through the valley of the shadow of death and fear no evil, because we know we're walking with the presence, and our presence is not affected by what you think of me. My presence isn't affected by whether someone tells me I'm wrong or I'm right, but rather when someone tells me I'm wrong, I say to them, wow, I would love to see what you see. I don't defend myself. I don't stand up and be self-righteous.
No resistance.
No resistance. I say, gosh, tell me what you see. I'm so curious that we look at the same exact thing. And I see it this way and you see it that way. Will you please take the time to show me the way you see it? I'm not saying that I'll agree with you. I don't want you to convince me to believe like you. I just want to know how to see what you see, so my perception of what this world is grows. I have a choice to always decide what I believe. So if we take the thought of someone disagrees with us as painful, and we have to defend ourselves because that's what we do, we stand in silos of like-mindedness, and we fight other silos of like-mindedness. Mm-hmm. And the gaps between those silos are getting wider and deeper. But if we take the time to say, hold it, I don't want to live in a silo protected from you. I want to live in an open field where we can talk together. In business, in family, in relationship, innovation comes when we blend the like mind with the unlike mind. And we find some way that we can coexist with each other rather than resist each other.
Yes. And how you mentioned in business, how can you, even in your personal life, how can you accept constructive criticism and be able to have those hard conversations without the other person being threatened, being belittled? Because I've had to have some hard conversations with friends, with, leaders, with different areas in life. And some people really felt threatened, like I was coming at them with this information. They didn't want to change it. This is how it is. This is how it's going to be. But in my spiritual development, I know that resistance is sometimes the enemy to development. If I can't tell you something honestly, and you really need to hear this information because you've been operating in this prototype for so long, that could be the thing that you need to hear. So how can we, have these hard conversations in business? We sometimes we're enlightened to this spiritual world, but sometimes people are not ready for that. Like one of my mentors, when I first started studying spirituality and non-resistance, he said, remember now, you're the only one that's studying this and praying for this. Everybody else around you is not ready for these hard conversations and, to be on that level of transparency. So how can we do that?
So with all due respect to your mentor, and I understand what he or she is saying to you. And at the same point, I would like to offer a different perspective. We have no idea what someone else is ready for or not ready for.
This is true.
we don't know when that moment will happen where that change in the way they see the world will change. But what I found in my life, and this is just me, it doesn't have anything to do with anybody else unless it does have something to do with someone else, okay? I found the only times I've ever had problems in conversations in my life is when I've had an agenda. Where I've wanted to show somebody something or teach somebody something or give somebody something that they don't, that I believe they don't have.
They're going to get it today.
You're going to get it today, and I want you to get it today, and I want you to get, this is the truth, and this is what I'm telling you, and this is what you got to do.
Right. Okay.
I would invite you to possibly see differently.
Okay.
I would invite you to, rather than tell them what to do, ask them how they see the world. And allow them to tell you the world they see. And instead of in asking them to do the world the way you want them to do it, listen to the world the way they see it. And you don't have to even share with them the world you see. By just holding the space for them to feel loved and accepted, where they can just tell you the world they see and not feel judged and not feel put down, where they feel listened to and heard. KK, what I found, and when I do that with people, the walls that they put around themselves to protect themselves, they realize they don't need them anymore. And they just instantly fall down. And who they are emerges. And who they are is much bigger than the walls that they have around themselves. We don't have to change or fix anybody. If we just love and accept people, allow their walls to drop, they know exactly what they have to do. And spirit will take over them and guide them to a place where they're bigger than the walls that they believe in.
Even if the conversation is about you, like I heard a concept of Jahara's window where your people are telling you what they see in you. So if you're in non-resistance and you're saying, okay, well, show me, how do you see this situation?
Yes.
I know how I see it, but how do you see it? And where we get to the true self, if we both are willing to go there.
Yeah. Can I share with you a story from the Mosaic?
Yes, please.
So the Mosaic is the book that I wrote, hovering over my shoulder. And it's a story about a boy who loses his parents 2 years apart on the same day. And he goes to the wisest people he knows, which is the adults, and he asks them where my parents are. And they tell him they're in a place called heaven. So he sets out in search of the place called heaven. He doesn't know what heaven is. He could be a store or it could be a rock. He doesn't know what it is. He's looking for that place where heaven is. And along his journey, he meets all sorts of different people. They're not who you would think. They're not the ministers and the priests and the shamans and the rabbis. They're common, ordinary people. People that people would walk by without even thinking about. And they certainly won't take the time of day to listen to ask their advice or listen to what they're saying. One of the people that he meets is a trash man. Now, there aren't many people probably listening here that if their son or daughter would come home to them and say, I want to be a trash man today, and that's my profession, they would say, that's a great job, go for it. But I want to tell you about the trash man that I met. Ever since I was 4 years old, I wanted to be a trash man. I would sit outside and I would watch the trash men come. And they would come in their truck. And in those days, they stood on the sides of the truck.
Yeah.
And they came down and they picked up the garbage and threw it into the truck. And then they pressed a button and the truck ate up the garbage and made it possible for them to put more garbage in. And I would sit there every day, every Friday, waiting for them. And the trash men that came to pick up our trash were not from our community. So there was, some sense of these people are not like us. But I was absolutely enamored. They were like my heroes. And one day, after being there for 6 months every Friday morning, watching them, I was probably 4 or 5 years old. The trash man looked over to me and said, do you want to come with me for a ride on the trash truck? And I thought I died and went to heaven. and I went running to the truck, and my mom was looking out the kitchen window and saw us. She said, what are you doing with my son? Where are you taking him? Total lack of trust and faith. And I said, Mom, it's okay. They're taking me around the block. They're going to let me ride the trash truck with them. And they said, if you're not back in 10 minutes, we're going to call the police. And the trash man said, ma'am, we mean no harm. We just see your son's been out here every Friday for 6 months. We thought to give him an experience. And they took me on the trash truck and let me push the button. And I just felt in bliss. And my mom came back and I said, Mom, I want to be a trash man when I grow up. And she said, Danny, I hate to burst your bubble, but you've tested with a genius IQ. You can't be a trash man. Well, the trash man I'm about to tell you about in the story of the mosaic, unfortunately, Mom, I've become. Mo was walking down the streets of a beautiful city. The streets were immaculately clean. He had nothing in his pockets, and he was carrying no backpack or luggage or suitcase. And suddenly a truck pulled up next to him, and the man stopped and looked at him, and it was a trash truck. And he looked at Mo and he said, do you have any trash that you want to put in the truck? And Mo was dumbfounded. He looked around him and he said, look, the streets are incredibly clean. I'm not carrying anything. Like, what are you, crazy? What are you doing? And he was just about to say to the trash man, what are you, crazy? When he saw the glimmer in the trash man's eye. And he realized this trash man wasn't talking about physical trash. He was talking about all the things, all the pains that he had, all the belief systems that he had that kept him from being who he wanted to be. And when Mo realized that, he started to cry. And he said, oh my God, I have so much trash. You have no idea. And the trash man said, that's okay. That's why I stopped. And he got down off the trash truck and he brought his cans and he put them on the sidewalk. And he said to Mo, put everything that pains you, every trouble that you have, every thought that you have of you're not good enough, every pain that you have in your body, every pain that you have in your soul, every pain that you can't forgive somebody for, just put them all in this trash can. We won't put them in the truck until you say it's okay. But I want you to feel for one moment the feeling of what you feel like when you're not carrying that trash. I want you to just experience who you are without all that. Mom, I'm sorry to tell you, I've become that trash man. That's what I do for people. I hold the space for them to empty out all the things that make them not able to do what they're clearly able to do.
Yeah, that keeps them stuck. That's so beautiful. Wow. So that is your gift to the world.
Yeah, and it's a gift anybody can have. I mean, who would think that the trash, if you listen to the sort of tone of the stories that I'm telling you, who would think that a girl who doesn't know how to speak and can't communicate with people would teach me my biggest lesson? Who would think that perhaps the lowliest profession in the world, the trash man, the one who goes and picks up all the things that people don't want, would have such a powerful impact on my life?
Yes.
What it might invite you to consider is what people in your life are you walking by and not listening to? What people are passing you by that if you would only spend a few moments with them, you would suddenly realize the lessons that you could learn from every single person that you pass on the street, every single person, the person that's mopping your floors, the person that's making your coffee, the person that's driving you from place to place, the bus driver, the homeless man. All of them have amazing stories to tell. We think that these people are broken, but the beauty of a mosaic is broken pieces make up an amazing story. And each piece, though broken, when it comes together and holds each other, creates an artistry that's far more beautiful than anything it was ever before.
And another thing that I've realized about life is that, we might think people are broken based on their positions in life, but that is happiness for them. And sometimes happiness, all the time, happiness looks different for everybody. Some people don't want to be the CEO or, the billionaire, the millionaire. They're perfectly happy with their lives, the trash man, whoever, that society deems to be subservient, but they're happy. They're living.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're not connected to all the material things in life. They're just very happy.
Yeah. And what you'll read, if you read the book that's available on Amazon, The Mosaic, you'll find that it's made up of absolutely beautifully ordinary people.
Yeah. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is your next pillar is love and acceptance. We talked about listening. Yeah. So love and acceptance.
Absolutely. When I was married and my wife passed away of a very, very painful cancer. And so I spent a lot of time just trying to heal from that. When I met the woman who is now my wife, I was not in the top form of my life. I was running a business, a clothing business, and I didn't know much about clothing, but I had a concept that I wanted to do, and I created this clothing line that had images and words on it. And I met up with a man from Hay House when I was at Hay House, a company that I helped grow from $3 million to $100 million a year in sales. And I brought him there, and his theory was that water was receptive to energy. So if you would write something on a positive thought on a piece of paper and set your glass of water on that piece of paper, what you would find is the molecules would absorb that positive thought, and you would be drinking molecules filled with positive thoughts of happiness or love. And so I had the idea to create a clothing line that put positive words and images and thoughts on the clothing. It was before anybody had written words and things on clothing before. And I said to him, can I tell your story to broadcast you out to the world? And he said, absolutely, I would love that. And so the clothing line took off. Neiman Marcus called me up and said, we want your clothes in our store. I didn't even present to them. I was in all the top spas and resorts around the country, around the world, and I was in a lot of the high-end boutiques. But one day my manufacturer got tired of making the clothes. And so 3 days before I was supposed to ship over $1 million of orders for that season, he told me he hadn't made a thing. So suddenly I was now $300,000 in debt that I had never been in debt before. And my heart started to palpitate, and I started to get anxiety, and creditors were coming at me that I had never even knew what that experience was like. I was in debt. My health was at risk. And into my life came a woman 21 years my junior, a beautiful woman from Argentina. And she fell in love with me. And I remember walking up to her and I said, why do you love me? And she said, nobody's ever asked me why I love them before. I don't need a reason to love you. I love you because I love you with every part of my heart. I love you. When she said that to me, I felt invincible. And what I realized is I wanted to take that feeling that she had given me, and I wanted to somehow give that in any way that I could to everybody that I could. And what I realized in that process is that you don't need a reason to love. I remember just the other day I was talking to someone people call me up and talk to me all the time. And I was talking to this woman and I said, I just wish you could know how much I love you. And she said, you're just so full of crap. I mean, how can you say you love me? You don't even know who I am. And I realized, and I said this to her, I said, so it's okay for us to hate people for no reason, but it's not okay for us to love people for no reason. I don't have to know who you are to love you. I love you for no reason. I just love you because I love you. And she went, oh my God, that's the most beautiful thing I ever heard. That was the gift my wife gave to me. And when we love people for no reason, they become more courageous. They take more risks. They take chances because we all want to be loved and accepted.
Yes.
And we don't need a reason to do it. We can give it to anybody.
And I think love and acceptance is such a valuable pillar of parenting. Love and acceptance, especially when you have children that are so different. They could totally like our children. We have 4 children. They're totally different in every way. But the love and acceptance that you have for them as an individual. Okay, you're not like this sister, you're not like this brother, but I love you because you're you. And it gives them so much power to launch from. Love and acceptance, it gives you so much energy. But, when you're constantly put down, when you're constantly pushed back, you can become small. Your life can become small and you could become fearful of life. So that is so powerful, love and acceptance.
Yeah, it was what put me on the search of my life because I felt completely loved and accepted by my parents. And when they passed away, I didn't know where that unconditional love came from. And I didn't know where I could find it again. And so I set out in search of the place called heaven, which is that place where we're loved unconditionally. Yeah. But we can do that. And it's just a change of perspective that allows us to, instead of seeing the flaws in a person, we see the beauty in a person. If you look at a mosaic, many times the pieces are not put together side to side like this. Many times it's just the smallest possible corner of one piece connects with the smallest possible corner of the other. But that connection of that small corner is enough to make the mosaic whole and to allow the mosaic to shine and be the artistry that it is.
Yeah.
Well, we don't need to be exactly like one another to love each other. We just need to find that one small area where we say, with all honesty, I love and adore you here.
Love you. That's so good. That's so powerful. So the next pillar is validation, acknowledgement and validation. How does that empower people when you acknowledge them? And can you give an example of how you empowered someone and validated them and it changed their life?
Yeah. Think of it in general. If people want to be seen and heard, how do we see and hear somebody? We listen to them. We love them. But then we acknowledge that what they're saying is what they're saying. And when people feel, in the world we live in right now, so many times we say something and people, while we're talking, people are already thinking about how they can disagree or questions they can ask, or they're lost up someplace else.
Yes.
But when we're able to be with somebody completely, to just listen to them and hear them, and after we've heard them, to take them, like it's great to listen and hear somebody. It's great to love and accept somebody. But the final ribbon on the gift is to acknowledge that you've heard them. You acknowledge that what they're saying is to acknowledge what they believe is what you've heard them say, and to say that I validate you for having that. Not that you don't need my validation, but I want you to know that I acknowledge and validate you for what you're saying. And even though it may not be what I believe, and even though I might think your beliefs are crazy, I want you to know that I acknowledge you for having those and validate you for having those beliefs. Some of my best friends in my life, my God, they had the craziest belief systems you could ever imagine.
Mm-hmm.
But if they were in harm's way, I would take a bullet for them.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not important to me what they believe. What's important to me is that I love them because of what they believe.
And accept them.
And I accept them.
Who they are.
And when we do that, and we're able to acknowledge and say, like, I don't think like you, but that's okay. The whole world isn't supposed to think like you. The whole world isn't supposed to think like me. I acknowledge and see the beauty. If you think again of what the imagery of a mosaic is, it would be very boring to look at if all the pieces were the same size and same color, same texture and same shape. The beauty of a mosaic is the diversity. It's the fact that there's every single color, every single texture, every single size. Some are whole, some are broken, some are shattered, some are large. But nobody's teaching people in a mosaic. Mm-hmm. There's not a vertical relationship where pieces are saying, this is who you have to be. There's a horizontal relationship where they just hold each other. And they acknowledge that being held by each other makes the mosaic more powerful. And they validate that you're an essential part of this mosaic. If artwork can do that so effortlessly, I guess I don't understand why humanity cannot.
And I think sometimes love looks like, okay, I could love you as long as you stay within this realm. As long as you are, your ideas are similar to my ideas, or as long as you, and especially in parenting, as long as you can stay within our family structure, whatever our beliefs are, as soon as you get out of there, you might be ostracized, you might be exiled, because you're threatening what I believe and what we look like. And family, how we look, it should be perfect. So I think when I see parents stand up for their children, regardless of who their children are, I really admire that in a parent, because it's just love. It's pure love. It doesn't have to look like what they thought it would look like, Yeah.
I certainly know that from having a 31-year-old developmentally delayed daughter. When I said she does speak, yell, tantrum, attack, it's all a very sweet package that you think happens all within the same time frame. Her time frame is slightly different than ours. And so her tantrum and her attack might come a day or two or a week later. It might come while we're sitting in a restaurant having dinner. It might come while we're in a business. I take her sometimes to business meetings with me. She might just lose it right there. It might come while we're walking down the street or driving in the car or at a friend's house or at a prayer meeting. But when you can say, it's okay, sweetheart. You don't need to be what anybody else thinks you have to be. I love you and accept you as you are. I acknowledge that you're going through something right now, and I want you to feel free enough to go through that. But if you think about the pain, the first question you ask me, what are you really trying to say? Because if I were hearing you, you wouldn't need to experience this pain. You wouldn't need to have the tantrum and the attack that's going on.
Right.
When our children aren't doing what we believe we want them to do, what are they trying to say to us? What is the messaging that they're giving us if we're probably not doing what they want us to do either. So are we big enough to be able to say, you don't need to yell and tantrum and scream and attack. What is it you would like to say? I'm here, I'm listening to you. I accept you, I love you. And I acknowledge your right to feel whatever you feel you want to believe. You don't need to believe like me. Mm-hmm. I still will love you.
I still will love you. Now, let me ask you this about parenting. It's a good approach to parenting. Because I was raised in the 70s, I was totally annihilated by both my parents. If you didn't believe what I believed, or you don't do what I tell you to do, then all bets are off. You're either getting a whooping, you're getting a punishment, you're getting something. So with my parenting style, a lot of times I'll ask my children, okay, what do you think should happen in this situation? Now, that doesn't mean that I'm totally going to eradicate what I told you to do or the structure, because they're growing up, they need structure. But in your opinion, with parenting, what is a great balance of the extremes? You won't let your children run over you, of course, but of course you're not whooping them every day. You're not, they're not slaves and you're not the tyrant. So what is the balance based on your principles with parenting?
So remember, I said to you, my moment of heaven was that moment where I realized my perspective could change. So let's explore what a perspective change would do in this situation. What if our parenting wasn't that we have to tell our kids what to do, but our parenting was that we have to listen to what it is they're trying to say and have them be able to express themselves without acting out, without doing without going against what the family believes. Remember, speak, yell, tantrum, attack. The only reason why someone tantrums or goes against us or has belief systems that don't feel comfortable is because they don't feel heard. They don't feel accepted or validated for what they believe. But when we can listen and hear, love and accept, and validate and acknowledge them for who they are, everything in the way we do everything changes. And it's a shift. It's a shift that can happen in parenting, that can happen in government, that can happen in our own self-care. And if we realize that our bodies are speaking to us, why do we have the pains that we have in our bodies? Because we haven't listened to it. Why is our environment is speaking to us? Why is our environment acting out so ferociously? What's going on? We're not listening to it. We don't have to worry about destroying the earth. The earth will be here for millions of years. What might not be here is our ability to inhabit this earth. It might exile us from this earth, because if we don't respect it and acknowledge it and love it and give it, it will tell us we can't be here anymore. So, but the earth will go on. We just might not go on. And without all the negativity that we're putting into it, it will fix itself. Look what COVID did in 2 weeks. It took the most polluted river in the world, the Ganges. And in 2 weeks, it was 50% less polluted, just because we didn't pollute it. And so everything has a way to self-correct. Everything has a way to find everything, whether it's human or non-human, knows exactly that place where they have to get to, where we have to get to, where we are in sync with who we are. If we would interfere less in our children's lives, but listen more to what they're trying to say, the approach, I believe, to parenting would completely change. All I can tell you is with my kids, who I have stepchildren now, when I try and impose my reality on them, they rebel. When I listen to them, they become the beautiful version of themselves that they are. And when I accept and acknowledge them for the fact that they might not do it the way I do it, that's okay. But I just want them to be able to do it with the thought that they're loved and accepted, listened to and heard. I don't want them to be rebels and do it because they have to make a statement. I want them to do it because this is what they feel to do. I have a stepson who's brilliant, but he hates school. School's boring for him. It doesn't push him enough. So he doesn't do his homework. He would test and he would get high test grades. But because he didn't do his homework, he wouldn't get good reports. He wouldn't get grades on his report card at the end of the season because he never did his homework. And we lamented about it for so long, saying, "You're brilliant. Why do you have this brilliant mind and you're not applying it?" And he just said, "But I'm learning everything. Look at my test scores. I know all of it. I don't need to do all the things everybody else needs to do to know it. Otherwise, I'm not testing low on my scores. I just am bored by the work that I have to do to show them that I got this." And he's doing the unthinkable. He's going to junior college now, but he's decided, I want to create a business where I don't make people do things that aren't necessary to do, that I focus on how do we get people to get to the best result rather than all the stuff that we think they have to do to get there. If they can get there without doing that stuff, I want to encourage that to happen. That's beautiful.
I can definitely say young people and older people, but, I see genius happening, creativity on another level, a proliferation of just entrepreneurs that are just not owning the traditional space of college and, the prototype that was given to us, but they're saying, you know what, I'm genius, I'm great, I'm going to do this the way I want to do it.
Yeah. Again, it's just another way of saying what we said, I think earlier. I can't remember if we said it in the green room or here, of that beautiful saying of Bucky Fuller, if we can't change the world that we live in by the thinking of the world we're living in, we have to create a new model, a new paradigm that makes the old paradigm obsolete.
Yeah.
And what we see is some of the institutions that we grew up with that were our mainstays that we never even questioned are being questioned now by the new paradigm of people coming up and saying, is this really the way to get educated? Do I really have to go through all this stuff? If I know the answers to things, why isn't that good enough?
Yes. So much genius in the world today. So I want you to tell the listeners, who is your book for and how can they access you? Who is your book for?
Thank you. The Mosaic is a fable. It's an easy to read book. It's for anybody who is excited about seeing the world a little differently, about opening up the perspective, about realizing that nothing is as it seems. It's a book for people who want to learn how to connect more deeply to the world around them, to the people around them. It's a book for people who want to understand that the ordinary is the most beautiful thing in the world. I ask people on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being what you would love to be and 1 being what you would hate to be, where would you place the word ordinary? And most people say a 1 or a 2. I don't want to be ordinary. And I say, okay, on that same scale, will you tell me, where would you place the word extraordinary? And they say, oh my God, we want to be extraordinary. We'd be a 10, 12, 20. I said, excuse me, I'm probably not smart. But can you tell me why, if ordinary is something you don't want to be, you want to be extra of something you don't want to be? Why would you want to be extra of something you don't want to be? And they say, well, oh no, but we're not talking about that. I said, I understand you're not, but think about it.
Yeah.
What the Mosaic showed me is that everybody's talking now today about their superpowers and how great they are. And this is my superpower. And I come in and I do this. I'm so bored by that, to be honest. I'm so bored by who people have to, the titles that we give to people. Even when we were talking, you said, well, how am I going to, what's your title? How will I describe you? What if we didn't have a title? Would we, there was a beautiful quote when I was growing up that said, would you still be a leader if they took your title away from you? Would people that you work in your company that you work with still look to you for leadership if you didn't have a title of leadership? Titles take away from everything that we are. They make a separation between what we say we are and who we actually are. And I just wonder what the mosaic showed me is extraordinary things happen when extraordinaries come together. We were never meant to do this alone. So for people who feel like they're alone and struggling to get this done on their own, read the book. Get a chance to see what would happen when we connect with other ordinary people. There's nothing more beautiful than a sunrise or a sunset. It's completely ordinary. We know exactly the time of day it's going to happen. There's nothing more exquisite than the transition from nighttime into daytime. Day doesn't care if night wants to stay longer. Day comes when it comes. We're the only species that I know that thinks we have to be more than we are. Yeah. For those people who think you have to be more than you are, we hold the bar up that we can't maintain. It's not sustainable. So we end up thinking I'm not good enough, or I can't do it, or I think, but we are. We just have to realize we don't have to be superheroes. We have to just be the exquisite, beautiful selves that we are.
Yes, that's so beautiful, because I think now more than ever, our world is growing at such a rapid rate, and peacefulness, stillness is just such a gem right now, because if you're trying to be superhuman and have superpowers and learn all this stuff in this digital age, and I'm not saying that that's not needed, but there is so much to say about stillness and peace and connection, true connection outside of the digital world.
Yeah. And finally, the book is for all of those ordinary people, all those people who don't feel good enough because they're ordinary. The main characters in my book are common, ordinary people. And there is something so beautiful about every single one of those characters. There's something so beautiful about every single being that exists in this world today. If we would only take the time to see past the superficial view that we see them in, and see them and listen to them, hear their stories, and connect with them, we would see the world as a much more beautiful place than we ever realized.
That's wonderful. So now, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your time. I know you could have been anywhere today. Thank you so much for joining me for this awesome, enlightening conversation, and just enlightening the listeners on what is possible when we dare to just let go and go within. So it's time for something to sip on. It's what I do at the end of each show with my guests. So I ask you 3 questions. So they are: what brings you joy, and what are you working on, and what is your greatest life lesson? So what brings you joy?
When I'm able to really listen to another human being, when I'm able to get out of my own way and love them for no reason, when I'm able to accept and validate them for who they are, and when I'm able to do all of those things for myself as well, that gives me immense joy, because I realize there is no separation between what people call the higher self and the self. In those moments, we are connected with that same spirit, God, that we believe in, and that we are filled and nurtured by that all the time. So often people think, well, I just do that. And I'll say to them, you're exactly right. You can't. And they'll say, what do you mean? That goes against what all the, practices say to you. So I said, well, let's just listen to the second part of it. You can't do it, but God can. Yeah. So why don't you give over the wheel to him when you can't do it, and let him do it through you? Yeah. Because he or she can do everything. Let go and let God. Totally.
Now, what are you working on in your life right now?
There's so many things that are in front of me, but let me answer this way. In the world that I live in, I see a lot of people pushing themselves and telling you how great they are in the stories that they say of, you got to work with me or do this or do that. I've gotten tired of that approach. I sort of, without the shock level that it has to it, I sort of feel like a prostitute on a street corner just selling my wares. It's cheap and it's ugly and it's not beautiful. Mm-hmm. What I realized is there's something else in nature that happens that is so effortless and beautiful. And it's when a flower opens, the aroma that comes through that flower is so magnificent that it can stop you dead in your tracks as you're walking by. That's the impact I want to have on people.
I feel that. I feel it.
Thank you.
Yes.
And so I'm working on selling less and just being more.
Yeah. That's awesome. That is an awesome analogy. And that's how, I really think that's how the authentic you shows up, and who God wants you to touch really shows up.
Yeah.
You're not chasing this, oh, I have to be on this stage, I have to do this, I have to do that. Your aroma of what you truly are, it shows up in this world. And who is supposed to gravitate towards that, they just do. And everything is in there. Everything that you ever wanted, everything that you are, is in that gravitation towards your aroma in this world. I think that's so beautiful. And
with all due respect, that's how we met, right? We were I think on Clubhouse. I said something and you said, I just love hearing what you say. And it wasn't with a sales thing. It was just, we were sharing ourselves. And I said to you when we started, either here, and I think I said it online, or I don't know if I said it in the green room, but I think I said it on recording, that we were spoke in the green room for just a short period of time. And I just felt instantly connected to you because of the aroma of who you give out to the world.
That's awesome. And that, I'm definitely putting that in my life's backpack, because that is something that before I do launch into my next level, that is just something that I know God wants me to know, is there is no value in chasing anything. It's who you show up and who you work as, because I want my work to be so authentic, and I always want the right people around me, or I am immersed in the right environment. So that is just a great way to put it, and I'm definitely going to live by that. So thank you so much for that.
Can I just say one final thing? I don't think people remember what we say. I don't think even people remember how we say it. I think people remember our presence.
Yes.
And when they feel in our presence something that feels safe and warm and good, they're drawn to us like a bee is drawn to honey.
Yes. I love that. So the last question I'm going to ask you, what has been your greatest life lesson?
I think growing up, I was a little bit of a snob. I only wanted to associate with people that were spiritual or high moral values. I only wanted to eat in restaurants or places where they cooked the food with love, because I wanted to surround myself in the environment of people that were elevated and people that were conscious. What I realized is there's nowhere in the world that people aren't that way. There's no person in the world with a change of perspective that won't lift me up if I allow them to. The poorest of people, the evilest of people, when I sit with them and listen to them, and I get beneath their anger, I get beneath their frustration, I get beneath their speak, yell, tantrum attack, I see something in people that are amazing. Can I tell you one more story? I've met a lot of different people. I've told you about my daughter. I told you about the trash man. There's one more person I'd like to share. And it's a story of a homeless man I met on the street corners of San Diego. Somehow I felt drawn to come up to this man. He was sitting where the pavement meets the building, and his butt was on the pavement, his back was leaning up against the building.
I can see it.
Yeah. And as I came up towards him, he was injured. You could feel the pain. And I put $1 in his hat. And then I stayed there, and he said, "What are you doing? Like, thank you for giving me $1, but what are you doing?" I said, "I just want to be with you a little bit." He said, "No, you're not welcome here. This is my spot. Don't try and take my spot away from me. This is my spot. The only thing I have in the world. Please don't take this from me. Go sit someplace else with somebody else. I'm not interested." And I said, "There's no chance in hell I'm going to do that, my friend." I said, "Something about you intrigues me." He said, "But I need to make money. And if you're talking to me, I won't make money." And I said, how much money will you make in the next half an hour? He said, "I make $5 a half an hour." I said, "Okay." I looked in my wallet and I saw I had a $50 bill. And I took the $50 out and I gave it to him. I said, "Will this cover me for half an hour?" He said, you're crazy. I told you $5 is what I make. Why did you give me $50? I said, I wanted to give you more than you expected because I just want to sit with you and I want to listen to you. And he said, okay, you're crazy. Come sit, you can sit down with me. And it took him a while to open up. But finally I said to him, Corey, you sit here and watch thousands of people walk by you every day. If you could harness them into an arena where you could say one thing to them, what is it you would want to say? And he didn't miss a beat. He said to me right away, Danny, I would tell them to just take 10 minutes out of the course of their life and go up to someone they don't know and ask them how they're doing. I said, Corey, that's beautiful. But of all the things that you could have said, why that? And he said, Danny, over the last 20, 40, 30 minutes, you've told me a lot of stories. Can I tell you one? I said, absolutely. I would love to hear it. He said, I'm ashamed and embarrassed at being homeless. I hate it. And if it's not bad enough that I feel my own shame at that, the way people treat me, they don't treat me like a human being. They don't even treat me like an animal. They treat me much worse than an animal. They treat me like a thing. People would walk by me on the street and they'll kick me or they'll punch me or they'll spit at me or they'll yell at me. I remember one time these boys were coming up and I thought, oh, great boys. Hi boys, how you doing? And they came and they beat the daylights out of me. They kicked me and they left me on the curb as if to die. And I didn't know if I would pull through or not. And while I was laying there on the curb, bloodied and beaten, I went into unconscious. I fell asleep. And I was awakened by a man urinating on me. And finally I said, enough is enough. Like, I hate my life. I hate what I'm doing, but I'm not bringing any joy to anybody. He said, Danny, you don't know it, but this is the main street of our town. The street right behind us, nobody travels. It's a dark, quiet street. And I decided when day turned into night, I was going to go to that street and I was going to take my life. No one would even know that I was gone for months, perhaps, because no one travels on that street. And 2 minutes after I had that thought, a man came up to me in a 3-piece suit and he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, how are you doing, my brother? And I looked at him and I said, this is not a good time, sir. You don't want to know. Just keep walking. You're not interested. You don't really care. Just keep walking. Don't spend your time here. It's not a good time to talk to you. I don't want to talk to you. Keep walking. And he said, the man just like you wouldn't take that response. He sat down next to me and he said, Danny, maybe it was because he was in a 3-piece suit and my clothes were shattered and torn. Maybe it's because I thought he was important and I was so unimportant. But when he sat down next to me, I put my head on his shoulder and I just started crying. Big crocodile tears came out of my eyes. And he said, cry, my friend. It's okay. I'm here for you. And suddenly, then he asked me, what's going on? Why are you crying? He said, Danny, it only took 10 minutes for me to cry and speak to him, for me to realize I couldn't take my life that night. Because here was a man, an important man in a 3-piece suit, who came up to me, an unimportant person, and cared enough about me to spend 10 minutes with me and just see how I was doing. He didn't try and fix me. He didn't try and help me. He didn't try and tell me what to do. He didn't try and tell me what I should be doing. He just sat there and listened to me. And so he said, I wish I could find that man again because he doesn't know that day he saved my life. But I've never seen him again. Well, there's something called the butterfly effect, that one butterfly in a land flaps his wings in some place in another land. The wind blows so strongly that it creates energy. Corey's story deeply moved me. And I wish I could find Corey again because he's not on that same street corner anymore. I've looked several times for him. But what I'd like him to know is now millions of people have heard his story. Millions of people have heard his request to take 10 minutes out of the course of their lifetime and go up to someone you don't know and ask them how they're doing and just listen to them. I would like to invite those people listening to this podcast to do that. What's 10 minutes out of the course of your lifetime? I would like to tell him that people have no idea the impact that they have now because they heard a story from a homeless man who was about to kill himself. And the final thing I would like to share with people here is the mosaic is made up of stories like that. Stories of people that nobody cares about, nobody looks to. A developmentally delayed girl, a homeless man, a trash man, and many others. But if we would take the time to just be with each other and love and accept each other, listen to each other and acknowledge each other, what we might just find is that we connect back to a world that is a beautiful mosaic where every piece of us creates the beauty of the life that we have in front of us to live. And how beautiful would it be? We all know, united we stand, divided we fall. Let's stand united and create a world that's beyond anything we could ever imagine. Thank you, KK, so much for having me here and holding this space for me to be able to share my thoughts with you.
Thank you so much. I've enjoyed every second of it. I have learned so much today, and I hope our listeners have gained so much insight and clarity on being a piece of the mosaic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And the work that you're doing in this world is so awesome and so needed. So thank you. So how can everyone get in touch with you?
My website is danielbrucelevin.com. There's a contact form there. And really who I would love to contact me is if you are one of those people that does not feel loved and accepted, does not feel listened to and heard, does not feel acknowledged and validated, reach out. I'm here for you. I will listen to you. I will love you. I will accept you. I will hold the space for you to take some risks. If you want to do work with me, I would love to do that work with you. If you want to learn how to do that and be someone who can do that, I would love to be available to you to help you figure out how to do that for yourself. And more than anything, like Corey said, what I'd like to start is an invisible revolution of listening. There's no uniform you have to wear, and you don't have to grow a beard like I have. You don't have to believe in a certain religion or not, but that we all take a moment to just listen to each other, to love and accept each other, listen and hear each other, and acknowledge and validate each other. That's all that has to happen. There's no membership fee. There's no course that you have to take. It's just as simple as that. Let's change the world through the power of what happens when we listen rather than when we speak. If you think about it, it's written right on our face. One mouth, two ears.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Thank you so much.
Blessings. Thank you.
Friends, thank you for joining me today. I hope this show was food for your soul and fuel for your life. You will be able to find everything about Daniel Levin and his work in our show notes wherever you're listening to this podcast. Please rate, subscribe, and share this podcast. And remember, you can always celebrate wins and get back up again inside the Mom Stuff Coffee Shop.